Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Talented Learning Executive Briefing Series. As you know, this is my favorite series of content because we get to travel the world virtually and meet with the world's best learning system solutions and learn all about their business, the problems they're solving in the marketplace, and then get to see a solid demonstration of the solution in action. And today's no different. From Canberra, Australia, we have Pursuit Technology and their Acorn LMS. This is, if you watched the hot take before, this is a really great solution. Can't wait to learn more about it today. We're here with Blake Proberts, who is the founder and the director running the organization, and has grown it from a little bit of nothing into a nice global company. So, Blake, it's great to have you here today. We can't wait to hear more. The rest of the show is yours. Tell us all about your solution.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. And look, it's great to be here. Look at a little bit about Acorn. We're an LMS who sort of, I guess, came about from Canberra, Australia. That's where our hub is. And since then, we've sort of grown out and spread out across the globe a little bit. Our main point of difference and where our thinking sort of probably differs from a little bit of the rest of the market is that we're really trying to focus with business strategy and really align learners' content and organizational content to competencies or capability frameworks to sort of direct the organization in a path that will hopefully have some positive outcomes from a business strategy perspective as well.
Great.
Yeah, so we've worked quite a lot with a few different clients across the sort of board. So we have a very strong foothold, obviously, in Australia, and we work quite a lot with the Australian federal government. But then we've also worked with airports, utility and energy companies, and sort of an array of different organizations of different sort of shapes and sizes. And we definitely sort of fall within that corporate L&D and corporate learning suite, I would say. We're not so much for the universities or the large, training organizations of the world. We're definitely much more focused around business impact and sort of strategic thinking.
So tell me about some of your clients or some of your solutions, Blake. What's that look like?
Yeah, look, we have quite a strong focus, I guess, on a multi-tenanted based platform. It was sort of, I guess, where our first big use case was working with about 44 federal government agencies, and so we really had to come up with a bit of a unique, I guess, proposition where we've sort of got quite a strong LMS within the LMS, if that makes sense. So if you've got an internal base and an external base, things like that, where we might have an array of integrations and different sort of things happening within each of those little ecosystems themselves, while being able to share content across those. So some of our maybe our larger use cases would be working with employment service providers in the Australian market. So essentially, if you're looking for a job or you're somebody who's out there trying to find a job or work, the federal government here has essentially taken our system, and then we've partnered with companies like LinkedIn Learning, Go1, Skillsoft to provide training to individuals, sort of looking outwards to try and find employment, but also train those employment service providers that actually help you find that job. So we're training around about 300,000 of them at the moment through the system. So it's a relatively good use case because it's a bit big. It's a bit bigger than the average. But we've had some really, really good feedback on that. And what it allows the department to do is essentially train both their internal cohorts and their different external cohorts from one central location. Then what we're able to do is essentially baseline the organization and potentially some of those external practitioners as well, and start to look at, hey, how proficient are they in these different arenas? Where do we maybe need to focus in a little bit on, and then take that sort of baseline assessment and then use that to drive capability uplift and growth for both those individuals, but the organization as well, so that we're sort of aligning those skills with what the business needs and what the future need of the business might be. So working closely with workforce planners, HR, and L&D, sort of as a bit of a cohort to achieve that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What about the other side of the Australian market, on the smaller side? What are your thoughts on that, and I guess the state of the market there and your position in it?
Yeah, so I think we've tried to design a solution that's really easy to use, and I think that everybody in the world is probably trying to design a solution that's easy to use, and it's a little bit harder, done than said. We work with an array of smaller organizations, and the smaller side of the market, we've had quite a lot of uplift from all the way from individual small companies sort of trying to look to sell training or potentially get people running through a course at an organization. Sort of up to those medium-ish sized businesses of 100 to 200, where they're looking for maybe something a little bit less sophisticated, not looking to potentially roll out a full capability suite or deck or something like that, but looking for your traditional onboarding, maybe compliance-based training and things like that. So there's quite a lot of that in our sort of our home market, being a little bit of a smaller country. I think sometimes I speak to some of the organizations over your side that have come on board, and they're tremendously large, and that's fantastic. But we definitely have worked with quite a lot of those smaller ones within that Australian market.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you think most organizations in Australia have come to the conclusion they need a learning management system, or are you still on your way to that point?
Ooh, I think we're on our way, but I think it's rapidly changing. So I think that we've sort of started to hit that bell curve now, where prior to COVID and probably prior to, I guess, the talent war sort of heating up and trying to retain and attract talent. I think that the LMS was a little bit low down the totem pole of systems. It wasn't probably at the forefront, but now, from what we sort of hear, organizations are really starting to look into, hey, we need to train our staff. The rate of change is so quick that the job role might not be the same next year as well. And so not only do we need to upskill, but we also just need to stay current, to be honest. And that currency, I think, is starting to drive quite a lot of adoption of learning-based systems. And I think that the mainstream, if you will, of that smaller business is starting to go, okay, we don't need this giant corporate system that costs, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. There are solutions out there now that can help us sort of achieve that without that giant spend. And I think because that market's adapted and evolved, that those organizations are starting to go, oh, cool, we can get on board with this now as well. So massive uptake at the moment. I think within the next sort of 2 years or so, it will be considered basically an integral part of any organization's tech stack, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so this is turning more into an interview, but it's interesting. So your organization then focuses on supporting, and I hear that your customer support rate is sinking all the way down to 99 or 98%. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. So we've managed to maintain 100% of our clients since our inception. So we're about 7 years old, give or take. We started off as a bit of a web application development firm, me and my co-founder, and then we sort of just looked across the LMS landscape at one point, and we're like, hey, I think there's a little bit of innovation that can happen here, and we had a crack. And since then, we've maintained 100% retention, and part of that is that 99% customer satisfaction. Which, depending on how you measure it, if you measure it within the last sort of 30 or 60 days, is 100%. I know when I originally you gave me a little bit of grief, and you said, "Where's that last percent?"
Last percent. I've been worried about it.
Yeah, yeah, we've managed to find it. So, So look, we just have a really, really strong sort of focus and ethos on it's a customer-centric system, So when we started, like I said, we didn't really know, to be completely frank, what we were doing, 7-8 years ago. So I was 22. We dropped out of university to sort of start to build the product, and so you don't know what you don't know. We got some really good feedback. We got some terrible feedback as well. And what we realized really quickly was, look, we need to really put the customer at the center of this. We can make things sort of easy to use. We can develop nice logic and whatnot, but there are people who have done this job for forever, and they really know what they want. And all we have to really do is listen to them. So we try and put the customer at the center of everything, whether that be the application development or the actual support of the system. So we have like a guaranteed 30-minute response time on our support desk. So if you send a ticket in or call, our guys get back. I think that medium to that time this morning I checked was about 18 minutes. So we try and really sort of make life easy and try and act, I guess, a little bit outside of the norm of sometimes what you hear within that software ecosystem. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Last question here before we take a look at it. Can't wait to take another look at it. The company, 7 years old now, and you say our part of the world on working with some clients. Tell us about where you're doing business, where your business, and about how many employees you have and where they're located. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, no problems at all. So our business is at the moment sort of a few key regions. So obviously Australia, we're in Canberra, capital city for those of you that don't know, and have a bit of a strong foothold here. However, over the last sort of two to 3 years, we've started to build up a little bit of a following over in the American market, Canadian market, but also the UK and some of those European nations as well. So sort of that APAC region, and then we've mainly focused on the US. We're sitting at about 35 employees at the moment. We have a little bit of hiring going on. So we grew about 174% last year, give or take. And so we're trying to fill some of those roles as we grow. And those employees are distributed both in Australia, but also over offshore in that American market as well. So we're actually in the process right now of setting up a bit of a hub and a bit of an office over your side of the world, and working out exactly where that should be, so the guys don't necessarily have to be remote and whatnot, and they've got a little bit of a place to come in and hang out.
Yeah, and we don't have to have meetings at 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. at night.
That's very true. Yeah.
All right. Well, great. Congratulations on your success and your expansion. That's a nice footprint and a nice spreading around the globe in not a lot of time. So you're doing some things right, especially with that customer sat and customer retention rate. So congrats for all that. Let's take a look at it. Show us what you guys are up to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just pop a quick screen share. Excellent. Is this one coming through okay?
It is. Looks great.
Perfect. So yeah, look, I'll give a quick rundown of the system and run through some of the core features. Obviously, look, it's super broad, so I'm not going to touch on anything. And if there's anything missing there, please feel free to let me know and ask. It's probably in there somewhere, but there's quite a lot going on in here. So essentially what you're seeing right now is the landing page, or what somebody would see once they log into the system. I will caveat this as well with everything you do see will be from the administrator perspective. And I'll point out the differences between that admin and that end user view. I know that some systems have a very different admin and end user view, but we don't so much subscribe to that. And we try to keep those views very, very much the same, so that you can sort of see what your users see in real time. So I'll point out those differences as I sort of jump through.
Great.
Outside of that, essentially, once you've logged into the system here, whether it be through single sign-on, username, passphrase, token, whatever access mechanism you've used, we've got our sort of our logo up here in the top left-hand corner. Now that's your tenancy logo. So the system's multi-tenanted, and you're going to be able to change that depending on the organization or the category within your organization there. So this branding can all be applied differently based on what you sort of need. Next to that, we've just got a site-wide search, so pretty straightforward stuff, a quick keyword search to get to some content. Home, the home link is where we are right now. Catalogs, where most of our content's going to live, and that's essentially where we're going to sort of drive users to maybe discover or find things. Then we've got any form of privileged access. So right now, this is the admin screen. And if I hit admin, you can see I get all sorts of different little buttons here that will take me to different feature sets. However, if you're maybe a supervisor or maybe some form of learning facilitator, a teacher, or something like that, that will change and update based on those permissions. So if you're a reporting officer and you just need to run certain reports within the organization, those will pop up here as well. As an admin, I sort of supersede all of that, so I get my big super admin menu. Next to that, we just have our little notification bell here. So this one's just going to tell us what's going on. So we've got sort of your classic training registration reminders that are going to pop up into here, but also things like new training that's been published or content that's been created that might resonate with the user that's currently logged in. Now, most of these notifications as well might have an email or a text message associated with them. So if I've signed up for my EY induction training, it's really important that I go. So maybe I'll get a text message the day before, as well as an email reminder too. So sort of those in-system, but also out-of-system notifications pop up in there.
Interesting. You know, I've never seen Just the simple thing of having a graphic on the notification there. It's a nice little UI. Hey, quick question on email versus text notification. Is it the same notification, or do you manage them differently depending on the device? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so slightly differently. So there's some limitations we have with text and email, obviously. So text, we've got a much smaller characters. I think it's a little bit smaller than a tweet. It's sort of around that 100 mark. Whereas the email notification, we can do things like attach iCal for your calendars, pop in additional files and things like that too. So we allow the administrators to configure those separately for the session. So they'll basically be able to pop in and sort of say, hey, here's my default template for my text message. And I want to maybe include a little bit more information, maybe where to park or some screen grabs of what the room might look like or what they sort of ask you to bring across. So a little bit different just because of those limitations.
Interesting. That's a nice point of differentiation. You wouldn't think of it, but a lot of the US-based systems, they still do email notification primarily, and a lot of them struggle with text. So to be able to do both and have it configurable, although small, is a nice point of differentiation.
Yeah, and I just think for those, if there's really important things that you don't want people to forget, that text message just gives that little personalized sort of kick where you might miss an email, but you probably won't miss that text. Yeah,
definitely.
Next, we just have our little person icon. And now what this one's going to allow me to do is jump into instant messaging if I've got that turned on within the tenancy, so I can chat to other users and groups of users. But also it's going to allow me to swap between different tenancies. Now I'm in a bit of a demo site here, so you can see I've got heaps of different tenancies within this little demo here. And now what I can do as a tenancy admin is I can swap between those tenancies. As you can see, the branding sort of updates and changes, the landing page changes, and all these things can be configured by the administrator. So where we have quite a strong, I guess, point of difference is if you've got a multi-role organization, or maybe if you've got sub-orgs, or again, that external internal training. So maybe you're looking to train external participants in something. We can handle that very, very well with that multi-tenanted functionality without necessarily you needing to jump into different systems and accounts to manage all of those different points of contact for those users.
Well, excellent. We love training external learners here at Talented Learning. Good.
I think it's a growing market. I feel the external learners.
Excellent. I agree.
Below that, we've essentially just got the rest of our homepage. So in the homepage here, we've got My Learning Calendar, and then we've got two what we refer to as programs, which are essentially learning pathways tagged at the top. And I'll run you through those quickly. But first, I'll go through the sort of the core of the homepage and run you through how this one works. So basically, each of these little blocks that you see here is a widget. I'm sure you're familiar with the widget concept where you can sort of jump in, you can drag and drop, you can move things and update your landing pages. And as an administrator, what I'm able to do is I'm able to pop all of these different widgets in here and then actually configure and tailor this page to meet my requirements and my use cases. So essentially to do that, all I got to do is jump into my tenancy management screen, hit widgets here, and it's going to give me all of these different little widget layouts. Now, there's a few menus here and there's a little bit going on, so I'll quickly break it down. You've got homepage widget layouts, supervisor dashboards, or manager dashboard widget layout pages. And then you've also got a reporting widget layout pages for your administrators as well. And now the difference between these three is the homepage is what we were just looking at then. So it's essentially what people are going to see when they first log into the system. Whereas the supervisor pages generally will have an integration with a HR or payroll system, or will have some form of supervisor hierarchy. And if it's important to the organization that the supervisors can directly run reports within the organization, or maybe people who they're responsible for, then that supervisor dashboard will allow you to pre-configure those reports. So it's a nice dashboard as opposed to them going in and having to rerun those reports every time.
Sure.
And then the same is true for reporting, but that's more for your administrators. Now, below that, you can see I've got a few different little layout titles here and widget domains. So we're actually able to have multiple landing pages and dashboards for different cohorts within the organization. So really simplistic sort of way to break it down might be you've got your HR team and we want to promote certain training to them, but then we've also got our IT team and we want to promote certain training to them. We can have a different experience for those different user groups. And you're not limited to one. So you might be able to have 2 or 3 different pages. So you might be enrolled in maybe leadership training because you're part of senior leadership of the organization, but you've also got, your sort of your standard or core homepages as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's pretty straightforward to edit it. You just jump in, hit the pencil, and then you just get a little edit button here. We just click this one, and then you can see all of the editing facilities sort of turn on onto all of these different widgets here. Now there's an array of different things. There's things like, progress trackers. We can track upcoming events and calendars, overdue training, and whatnot. But what you're able to do is essentially just grab them, drag and drop them to wherever you would like to put them there. If we maybe want to change the size, we can just drag and change the size. We can edit any of the widgets by just hitting the pencil and then configuring it based on sort of what we've selected in there. And we can also just jump up to this add new widget, and we can pop new widgets into our widget dashboard here as well. So we can just jump in and choose any of these new sort of widgets, and we are able to do little custom ones of these if there's something that's super niche that an organization might need. But most of your core sort of landing page stuff will pop up in here.
Nice. Next
to that is just our little mobile phone icon. Now, what that allows us to do is see the tablet and mobile version of our homepage. So as you can see, our big pretty picture, it's not so pretty on a mobile phone. It sort of gets cut out. It doesn't look that great. And what we can do is we can actually change the layout based on the device type. So as an admin, if you've got a highly mobile workforce that are on the phone a lot, or you want to sort of provide a really direct access to some training, you're able to do that by just sort of jumping into here and changing what they see on those different devices. Now, so you don't have to duplicate all of your work, it's going to copy your homepage the first time across. And then basically once I start to edit this, it's going to give me a different view on the mobile side than it will on the desktop side. And I've just clicked that little link there, but you can just pop them around like that, and then away you go. Now that's essentially our homepage. Look, the last things on this page are just really boring, normal LMS-y kind of things. So the first one is just the ability to change our password. If you've got username, passwords, passphrases, you can just jump in here and you can change these ones. You can request an account merge. Now this one's a pretty nifty little function that we find if we've got multiple organizations or people within multiple organizations that are sort of moving quite a lot. So what we can do is we can actually link their accounts within Acorn, no matter which Acorn system they're in, and we can actually transfer that training history across. So again, a use case that we've sort of managed within the federal government space is someone might go from Department A to Department B. Federal government training is a bit similar across the board there, with some niche training depending on the different department. We don't want to make them redo that induction every time. So we actually take that learning history for them, and then we merge that with their new account when they jump into that new organization. Then lastly, we just have our sort of support tab here. Now, what this one's going to do is it's going to give you details to our support desk. It's going to give end users details to end user support. And it's also going to give you a quick little link here to our help center. So our help center is where all of our help materials are going to live, guides, FAQs, but also forums for the community to sort of chat amongst each other, maybe ask for different features. We've got a little bit of an upvote system where we say, hey, is there anything you guys want to see in the system? And people say, I want to see this. Oh no, I want to see this. And they sort of facilitate a little bit of discussion in there, along with things like patch notes, API keys, and just those general sort of techie help things that are in there. So if you jump in and you just maybe wanted to know about how to create a course, there'll be a little article with some little videos in here of, hey, we're going to take you through how to create a course, or whatever that might be there as well. So you can sort of jump in and just get a little bit of help. I know self-help, sometimes it's easy just for a quick refresher rather than an email or a phone call. So that's what that one does there.
All right.
And that's essentially our homepage, and that's how that one works. So pretty straightforward. You've got a lot of flexibility and control over that, and you can have as many widgets and cohorts and groups of users as you would like. So you might have one, you might have 400 or 500, completely up to the organization.
Okay.
Our next little tab here is our My Learning tab, and this is, in essence, my personal profile. So there's administrator reporting where I can see completions and things like that, but that's going to live a little bit elsewhere. And this is essentially what our end users are going to see. So I'll just break down a few of the key sort of functions and features within this little area here. essentially, at the top here is our history. So that's where we can see all of our enrollments, things we've attended, completions. And then if we wanted to jump in and maybe do things like download certificates that have been generated, we can just jump into our completions. We can see, I've completed a privacy course here. And if I want to view my certificate or any awards, I can jump in and sort of have a look at those. And all of those are completely customizable and configurable by the organization as well. We've also got essentially recommended content. Now, this one works in two different varieties. So the first is if the organization just wants to publish some content and they really want to get some recommended content in front of users, they can influence what pops up in this little tab here. Now, if the organization wants the LMS to use the learner's input to sort of essentially publish recommended content. So we're going to look at what capabilities and skills are you learning. We're going to look at maybe you did something over at LinkedIn Learning and you really liked it and it was a video and we've noticed you've done a few of those. We might take their taxonomy and then combine it with the organizations to find some of that content and publish it here as well. Or it might be something simple like, hey, I really like reading. And there's some good activities within the system that are reading based and not so much video based, and they're going to be able to be populated in there as well. So the more the user engages, the more accurate that's going to become, and the more the system can kind of learn a little bit about what's working, what's effective, and maybe what's not so effective, and start to maybe move that out of circulation as well.
Great.
Now, below that, we've got the development plan and the badges. So there's a pretty strong gamification system within Acorn itself. And essentially what we've done is we've built both a badge and a points awards-based system. Now, as an organization or an L&D leader, you're able to create your own rewards and your own badges and pop those into the system. But the system also comes with inbuilt gamification sort of metrics in here. So depending on how the user interacts with the system, they're going to be awarded some different things. And what we're trying to really do is we're trying to incentivize the learner to come back and to finish training, but also give them some triggers to sort of continue that learning process so that they're constantly engaging with the application and the system and learning, but in the best way for them, so we want them in here for the best way for them. So we can see some of our hidden rewards, but we've also got some additional things that the user can't see until they complete to keep those triggers a little bit fresh and a little bit engaging. And sometimes an organization might want to put their own reward metrics in here as well. So it might be, lunch with the CEO because you've completed X amount of things. Now, for some people, that's a reward, and for some people, that's not. So we can change that depending on the org and sort of pop those little things in to just keep it a little bit fresh and engaging for the users. And I have a fun fact about these actually. So when we rolled out these badges within the Department of Education and Employment, we saw a 400% uptake in completions from courses. So courses that had been started but had not yet been completed increased 400% basically in terms of completion. So they, as funny as it sounds, they do work and people really like them.
Yeah, apparently that's amazing.
Yeah. Then lastly, we've got our capabilities. So essentially what this allows us to do is, as an organization, we can assign capabilities to different groups of users within the system. And then they're going to pop up as assigned capabilities just here. So that could be job roles, that could be locations, a combination of the two, whatever that might be. And then what we're also able to do is, as a user, is basically build out some interest capabilities. So we might look at some job roles that we aspire to transition to, or there might just be some things that we think will help a little bit in our day-to-day work. And what we can do is we can pull interested capabilities from the organizational framework. Then what we want to do is basically facilitate a discussion with a manager and the user, maybe just the user by themselves, sort of having a bit of a think, where the user then can come in and they can essentially build out a bit of a development plan on the capabilities that they or the organization think that they should work on. So they can sort of jump into here. We can select a few capabilities to work on. And then what the system's going to do is it's going to reach out and find all the content associated with those capabilities. And we've got 3 content categories here. So we've got LMS content, which is anything the organization's uploaded into the LMS, created in the LMS themselves, and generally content that they sort of own or control. The next one is partnered content. Now, we work really closely with several of the larger e-learning providers and a lot of the really little ones as well. So we were LinkedIn Learning's first alliance partner globally. So they started that program actually in the Australian market, and they were fortunate enough that they picked us to run that partnership with. Go One, who are obviously up and coming and hear quite a lot about their Brisbane base. So I'm harping on about my home country here, but they've got a soft spot for us. So we work quite well with them as well. But also guys like Skillsoft and Udemy, and there's a plethora of different learning products out there. We integrate with all of them. And essentially what we can do is we can apply the organizational capability framework to not only your content, but their content as well. And so the partnered content tool will actually reach out and pull their content into the system, and then we can use that as part of our development plan as well. Then lastly, we've got external learning. So we know that all learning doesn't happen by our traditional means of e-learning and sort of, always being behind the screen of a computer. So this one's going to be able to handle things like conferences, job shadowing, webinar, coaching, and other sorts of programs that aren't necessarily housed within the system per se, but we do want to record and track and manage them. And as a user, it's quite straightforward. I can just jump in, I can pick some of the content that I'd like to work on, and then essentially start to assign them to my little capabilities. Now it's going to say, hey, you've already done this, or give you some little prompts and triggers if maybe I'm not ready for a level 4 or I'm not ready for a level 6 as well. But I can sort of jump in here and I'm going, no, I am ready and I do want to get that done. And then essentially it's going to build out our development plan, give us some progress of how we're tracking with that. And then that's going to give the user and the administrator a bit of a baseline for how they're progressing, give them an area to track that capability development. And then essentially what we want to do is we want to reassess their capability in 6 to 12 months. And we want to make sure that A, we're staying current as the world's sort of changing quite a lot, but B, that we're also essentially hopefully building some of that capability and maybe de-risking some areas or seizing some awesome opportunities that the organization might have up and coming that we need a certain level of proficiency for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's the process, Blake? What's the process? How manual or automated it is when you bring in Go One's library that you're tagging that inside your competency framework? How easy or hard is that?
It's really, really easy. So the way that we manage that is essentially there's a capability screen within the system. So my little capability dashboard here, it's going to give you a little bit of an overview of your capabilities. But to set it up, it's quite straightforward. So you can jump in here. Now, I've already got this pre-configured and I'm using Assist for Finance framework just up the top here. However, the organization can jump in and they can essentially use any capability framework they would like. There's some pre-loaded frameworks within the system if there's something they want to leverage, or they can do something completely custom. Then what will happen is one of our team will actually work with the organization to understand that capability framework, understand the different capabilities and the different proficiencies within those sets of capabilities. And then we have, if you will, a bit of a hidden framework that your framework will be mapped to, which will then automatically map you to all of those third parties because we've done the pre-mapping already. So as soon as you pop this in here, essentially one of our team is going to manually check that, just because terminology is a bit of a beast sometimes and a wily thing. Make sure that aligns. Once that aligns, your content's effectively mapped to hundreds of thousands of pieces of, so your capabilities are effectively mapped to hundreds of thousands of pieces of content across an array of different systems there. So it's basically a turnkey solution is what we're looking to get out here. Now, I do know that's a bit of a process. I am just saying, hey, you just pop in your capability framework, and I know that it's not quite that simple. But once you do have that framework and you can pop it in there, you essentially just tag the capability. Then what we do is we pick some capabilities and we choose the different user groups that we're going to pop them into, and the different content within our own LMS as well that we're going to pop them into just through simple menus like this. And it will give us a little bit of an overview of what we're doing here. So look, really straightforward. It's one of those things that we find if you get in and have a little bit of a play, there's a slight learning curve, but once you're through that learning curve, most of our admins sort of can pick this up and run with this quite quickly. Awesome. And that's sort of what the remainder of our homepage. The only other little things to pop in here would just be, look, we've got our upcoming training. So any live learning events that we want people to attend, maybe that be physically or digitally, are going to pop up in here. as well as our calendar. Now, I'm going to jump quickly into the calendar to run you through this. The way that the calendar works is any of our face-to-face or face-to-screen training will essentially pop into this one. It's also going to be in our catalog. Now, you might notice that on the left-hand side here, I've got a bunch of different states. Now, this is going to actually read my local machine and tell me where I am. And then, so I'm currently in Canberra, Australia. So it knows that. So it's giving me Australian-based time zones and Australian-based states. Now, if I'm not in Canberra, Australia, it's going to update. Now, the American market, we have a bit of a nicer American calendar for you. You've got a few more states than us, so it looks slightly different. And then for other regions outside of sort of America and the UK, we do basically a global calendar where you can search based on time zone, where we might not have every single state and territory in every single country just yet, but we're chipping away and we're building that out there. So that'll actually just automatically update based on me and where I'm sitting. Nice. And then lastly, on our sort of our homepage here, what we have are programs. And what programs allow you to do is build out a bit of an overview of some form of training in a bit of a longer format. So what we're able to do is we're able to take any of the content that we as an organization have put into the system, combine that again with any of that partnered content or external content, and we're able to build out some stages and progression that's maybe linear or not so linear within the system. And then we're able to pin that to the homepage, or we're able to make that a program within the catalog that a user can select to start and do themselves. So we often find that things like induction, onboarding, they tend to be pretty important, and they want to be pinned up to the homepage, maybe compliance training, just so it's front and center and we don't breach any of those sort of guidelines. However, this can be called whatever you want. So I've called it induction and management training. You could label it absolutely anything, and you can put absolutely anything into this that's in the system. And essentially the user will see all of the different pieces of content within the system. And then they won't be able to progress until they've finished a prior stage, unless you've pre-configured that to work in a different way. Now, they can essentially browse everything, and I can jump through and I can see, okay, here are my different stages, but I can't progress on those ones until I've done what's in the program. And there's all sorts of different business rules you can set up. So we can pop due dates onto some of these or all of these. They can be mandatory or not mandatory. They can be and or optional. All those kinds of things pop in. And as an administrator, the only difference on my screen is going to be my little cog here on the right-hand side. And essentially, this one here is a bit of a recurring theme. You'll see our little cog pop up every time we want to edit something. We can just jump into here. We can hit Update Program. And this will give us the ability to pop in, change our title, maybe pop a duration on, and edit anything that's within the system. This one's actually a nifty little feature that I wouldn't mind showing you, just because we've got some good feedback. I'd love to see what you think of this. So anytime there's an image required in the system, we've got a little inbuilt image library where the admin can just sort of jump in, and we might want to say induction. And what that one's going to do is it's just going to search for different images that are tagged with those different sort of categories. So I can just jump in and I can pick any of these pictures. And this is a full royalty-free image library. So you can jump in and you can use any of these images for any of your courseware or anything that you want to pop in there. And we've just got a little cropper here that they can just jump in and sort of pick there. And then essentially we can choose to pin this to the home page. We can hide it if maybe we're not ready to roll that out yet. And then we can do things like enforce the stage order, or maybe restrict it to a certain group of users within the organization. And then we simply just hit update, and that's it. We're all updated and we're good to go.
I haven't seen the image selector before. I just know with my couple hundred courses, I have to go into Canva, create a new project, do the same search to try to find a stock image, and then get it to the size I want, and then save it to my machine and bring it back into the thing. And so that's probably about 25 clicks that you don't have to do just by providing that library. Or
yeah. Look, it's just one of those things when we sort of work off the jobs to be done model, and we go, what do the admins actually do? What do they actually have to do? And you jump into the system and you see a few images, or maybe the same image because they've run out of time. We just sort of thought, hey, let's solve that. Let's not make that a problem anymore. So it's funny because some of the littler features are the ones where we get really, really awesome feedback on. And that's one of them where people just kind of loved it. Yeah.
Simplest things.
Yeah, it's always the simple ones. So basically then within the system here, in our course catalog, which is actually just about to be updated shortly, but in our course catalog here, what we're able to see is all of the content within the system. And now this content can, again, be in-system content that we've created, but it can also be partnered and external content that we pull in from other systems that we're able to tag and categorize as we want to within our own system. So everybody's got a different taxonomy. We want to work with them, but we don't want to limit our admins to using them. And essentially, what we've got here are a few head categories at the top. So we've got courses, which are any of your self-paced training that you've sort of developed yourself within the application. Live learning, which is any session-based training. Now, if we've got an integration with something like Microsoft Teams or Zoom, let's say, that will allow you to automatically create the sessions, take the attendance based on the organizational accounts and things like that. And we can essentially populate our times and our dates and all of those sort of normal things that you'll have for a live learning session. Then the next three: videos, resources, and pages are more or less those nice to have things that we don't necessarily want to say, hey, we want you to enroll and complete in a traditional LMS style. So if you've got maybe a welcome video from the CEO or a resource of a seating plan of where you're going to go on your first day or something like that, those are going to pop into those different categories here. We have programs, which are those ones that I showed you briefly on the homepage, but if we've got any that aren't there, they can pop in here. And then partnered content is going to be any of that third-party content. So any Go1, Skillsoft, Udemy, any of those kinds of guys are going to come through from the partnered content there.
Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say that self-paced e-learning content, you're making the assumption that you're doing that in an authoring tool and then bringing that in as an object? Is that your approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So our assumption would be that the org would have some of that training completed and they want to pop that in there. And now if they do use an authoring tool, we may already have an integration where we can sort of do that in system. So we're currently working with, as an example, Easy Generator, where you can actually leverage their product from within the LMS. So again, you don't have to go outside the system to create it, but unfortunately, we're not a SCORM authoring tool. There are some people out there that do it really, really well. And we're trying to work with them to bring that into the system.
I see. Okay. No, it's a good strategy. I was just asking.
Yeah. And then just quickly, this is essentially what a course page will look like. So as an admin, again, the only difference is my little cog, but basically we've got our image, title, any requirements, overdues, rewards, things like that are going to pop up the top here. I'm enrolled, so I can see a description. I can drop into details, which are going to show me things like categories and keywords and all sorts of different stuff. And then essentially the way that our system works is that we have different sections that are made up with activities. So if I just hit my little cog here and I want to edit or create content within the system, upload SCORM packages, create a quiz, pop a video in, all I do is I'd hit start editing and get all of my little editing functionality here within the system. Now I can change the order by just dragging and dropping the different sections. I can hit my little pencil, which will allow me to edit the different settings within each of these activities here. We can clone them. So if we're making slight edits for different groups, just an easy way to do that. And then we can also essentially set completion criteria, prerequisites, and things like that. Someone's just started drilling right above me. I don't know if that's coming through or not. But
I don't hear it.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. And we can also pop in some completion criteria or prerequisites, things like that within the system. So essentially all we do is we'd hit create section. You can see we've got a little section 4 that's popped in here. We can change the section order. We can create a new activity. Now, we don't have time for me to go through every single activity, but there's a few activities in here, all of your standard LMS type activities, as well as some additional things like forums and wikis, along with XAPI and external launch links. If you are running like an LRS or essentially hosted SCORM, LMS will adhere to all of those requirements. And we can also pop in things like assignments where we have a facilitator manually maybe read that or check that, along with assessment quizzes and things like that. All I would do is I'd just jump in, I'd pick what it was. So we go video, we pop in a name, description, maybe a file upload, or we might link from a Vimeo or a YouTube. And then essentially away we go and we create that activity. Once that's been created, the admin will be able to then jump in here, edit, play with things, delete them, remove them, update them, whatever it is that they might want to do to make the course look, feel, and sort of flow in the way that they would like it to flow as well. And that's basically how the course page works, and how an admin would jump in there and populate their own content. And then the only little differences would be within our live learning sort of content type, where as opposed to having a course with sections that have activities, we have a live learning that has events, which has different sessions. And so again, we can just jump in here, we can hit our cog, we can turn editing on, and then what we're able to do is jump in and we're able to create different session types. So face-to-face, face-to-screen. If we've got any of those integrations with the Microsoft Teams or WebEx, any of those platforms, we're able to manage those integrations directly from the interface. So we're not managing the session in two places. We can pop in approvals if we want approvals and withdrawals throughout the organization, as well as do things like add instructors to the course. And that might be inside our organization, or we might have someone who's coming in outside of the organization that we want to give a little limited access to, so they can come in, facilitate the session, not maybe see all of our content and then come back. So we're able to pop those in as well. We're able to pick things like venues, times, dates, sessions, minimum capacity, wait lists, all of the normal stuff. And then down here, we touch briefly on our different notification systems. So let's say we've got our details in the system. This is a great session. And then we're able to do things like customize calendar invites, along with other things within the session itself. If the organization does want to charge or pay for training, they're able to pop payments onto training as well, so that they can sort of maybe facilitate a sale to an external party or something like that. And then we just create that one there. That's going to pop in. As a user now, I can jump in, I can register, see my registration status, and then as an administrator or that facilitator, I can basically manually register users into the session here. We can withdraw our users from the session, view and take the attendance manually. Ideally, we want to facilitate a bit of an integration work so that we can automate this process for the admin. And then we can also send out any ad hoc emails. So there's an array of different templated emails that will trigger upon things like attendance or registration. But if we just need to send an email out, maybe something, a quick room change, something like that, we can jump in here and we can send those emails out. We can attach things to them, and we can also schedule them to go at a certain date and time. So they're sort of pre-set up for our session. We're not having to worry about that. And then lastly, we just have a little session log. So a little audit log, just so we can see what's going on in there. And that's, I guess, a bit of a quick overview of the system and most of the end user screens. Now, we've got heaps of different functionality in here. We have things like special onboarding courses. We have the ability to run all sorts of different reports. We can configure self-registration forms for external participants and things like that to make their own accounts. All sorts of different stuff within the system itself. That I'm more than happy to run anybody through that wants a bit of a look or thinks it might be useful. And you don't need to use all this functionality. Essentially, all we do, if we want to sort of have a bit of a play with functionality, is we jump in, we hit our features button, and if you want to turn a feature on or you want to turn a feature off, you just go, okay, I want live learning, I turn it on, and then you've got that. If that one's off, you're not going to have a calendar. Same as something like maybe payments, you're not going to have payments showing up or anything that doesn't need to be there unless we want to use it. So we've got an array of different features within the system, things like CPE points and linked accounts, mobile applications, SMSs, like I mentioned, all sorts of different stuff that isn't on that I'm more than happy to run anybody through. So if anything was missing, please feel free to reach out and get in touch and whatnot. But that's a bit of a high level overview. So hopefully I've given you a good overview of the system, and it's sort of what you're looking to see.
Awesome, Blake. That was a great overview of the system. I could tell that you play in it all day, every day, as you're just clicking super fast through everything. But it is you've really accomplished a lot as an organization and just a product development. It's remarkably deep of the configurability options that you have across the different areas. It's very super modern, and the dragging and dropping and the clicking, and I just love the administrative paired with the learner interface. So it's not another site to go to or learn. It's all part of the same, and the little touches that you have all the way through to make things easier. for admins, from notifications to the text notifications to the drag and the drops to really the recommendation engine for content, and just little pieces all over the place. The images, the image library. So even for the different types of learners, from learner to administrator, there's so many little pieces that it's hard to put your finger on one and say, oh, I'm going to buy Acorn LMS because of this. But just these little pieces all add up to a really nice, streamlined, efficient learning management system. It looks like it can handle a lot, especially with the slick way that you've done multi-tenancy. So all in all, I'm super impressed with the company, the growth, and really how much you've accomplished in a short amount of time. Other organizations that have similar lengths of time under their belt don't have nearly this functionality, I think. So you guys are really screaming along at a great pace. And from what I can see in the Australian market, sometimes when we talked, you made it seem like maybe it's behind our market. It doesn't seem behind it. It looks like you're doing the exact same things that we want over here in the United States for sure. So I imagine you have broad global appeal for the solution too. So I think you hit right on it, Blake. If anybody that's watching it and gets to this point right now and you're as thrilled about the system as I am, reach right out to Blake and get into that next layer of detail around your use case and be able to see and learn about the system, through the lens of what you're actually trying to do as an LMS buyer. So there you have it. Blake Proberts, founder, director of Pursuit Technology with the Acorn LMS. Listeners, thank you very much for tuning into another episode of the Talented Learning Executive Briefing. Now you can see why this is my favorite series of content, because you just can't get an education like this anywhere else than this series, unless you just reach out to Blake directly. So there you have it. We hope to see you on the next one. You can find more of our independent resources at talentedlearning.com. Have a great day, everyone.